Hare Krishna, everybody. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Prajajannaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Iraya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Iraya Jaya Gopi Janavallava Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Prajajannaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya A reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 13, Text 26. Desham Satam Veda Vitana Murtir Brahma Vajayatma Gunanuvadam Vinadya Bhuyo Vibhudayaya Gajendra Lilo Jalama Vivesha Tesham Satam Veda Vitana Mutir Brahma Vadayatma Gunanuvadam Vinajabhuyo Vibhudo Dayaya Gajendra Lilo Jalama Vivesha Tesham Satam Veda Vitana Mutir Brahma Vadayatma Gunanuvadam Vinajabhuyo Vibhudo Dayaya Gajendra Lilo Jalama Vivesha Tesham Satam Veda Vitana Mutir Brahma Vadayatma Gunanuvadam Ladies? Tesham, of them, Satam, of the great devotees, Veda, all knowledge, Vitanamurti, the form of expansion, Brahma, Vedic sound, Avadharya, knowing it well, Atma, of himself, Guna Anuvadam, transcendental glorification, Vinajja, resounding, Bhuya, again, Vibudha, of the transcendentally learned, Udayaya, for the elevation or benefit, Gajendra Lila, playing like an elephant, Jalam, the water, Avivesha, entered. Translation. Playing like an elephant, he entered into the water after roaring again in reply to the Vedic prayers by the great devotees. The Lord is the object of the Vedic prayers, and thus he understood that the devotees' prayers were meant for him. Please repeat. Playing like an elephant, he entered into the water after roaring again in reply to the Vedic prayers by the great devotees. The Lord is the object of the Vedic prayers, and thus he understood that the devotees' prayers were meant for him. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The form of the Lord in any shape is always transcendental and full of knowledge and mercy. The Lord is the destroyer of all material contamination because his form is personified Vedic knowledge. All the Vedas worship the transcendental form of the Lord. In the Vedic mantras, the devotees request the Lord to remove the glaring effulgence because it covers his real face. That is the version of the Isopanishad. The Lord has no material form, but his form is always understood in terms of the Vedas. The Vedas are said to be the breath of the Lord, and that breath was inhaled by Brahma, the original student of the Vedas. The breathing from the nostril of Brahma caused the appearance of Lord Bo, And therefore, the Bo incarnation of the Lord is the personified Vedas. The glorification of the incarnation by the sages on the higher planets consisted of factual Vedic hymns. Whenever there is glorification of the Lord, it is to be understood that Vedic mantras are being rightly vibrated. The Lord was therefore pleased when such Vedic mantras were chanted, and to encourage his pure devotees, he roared once more and entered the water to rescue the submerged earth. Translation again. Praying like an elephant, he entered into the water after roaring again in reply to the Vedic prayers by the great devotees. The Lord is the object of the Vedic prayers, and thus he understood that the devotees' prayers were meant for him. Om Ajana Tamaranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayarupagadam Mayam Dadati Swabadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. So the purport is telling us that it's telling us a lot, but the Vedic prayers, actually, as we know, there are 4 Vedas, the Rig Veda, the Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharva Veda, etc. And essentially, that's what they are, all verses and etc. in glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Rig Veda is actually known as the Veda of the verses and is the largest of the Vedas and essentially considered to be the most important. Srila Prabhupada often, when prayers are being chanted by the demigods or different great personalities in glorification of Krishna, which we see obviously in the Bhagavatam and also the Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada often comments, or certainly sometimes comments, that's the most important part of the Shastra, of these pastimes and all these different stories, etc. That's the most important part. And the reason that he gives for it being the most important part is that the personalities chanting those prayers and those mantras, that they have realized their position in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So basically they've surrendered and they're glorifying Krishna as a result of their realization and their position of surrender. And it's kind of interesting because obviously in the material world, very few people have surrendered to Krishna, and they're afflicted with the disease of wanting to lord it over the material nature, thinking that they're in control. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, particularly in relation to atheistic science. But they're convinced, and they are convincing themselves every single day, reinforcing this understanding that they can, answer the questions of the universe and be in control of everything. But the irony is that the more that people are have that mentality and that understanding and that conviction, the less they can control anything, and the more out of control they are, and the more they are dictated to by the material energy. Whereas these great devotees who are chanting these Vedic prayers in glorification of Krishna, understanding how limited we all are as individual living entities in the material world, they can actually go on to achieve extraordinary things in the service of the Lord. It's quite a kind of juxtaposition. The people who want control and want to think they're in control of everything are actually, in control of nothing like that. But the people who actually realize they're not in control and surrender to the Supreme Controller can go on to achieve absolutely extraordinary things. And of course, that's documented throughout the histories, the Vedic histories, etc. But we don't have to look any further than Srila Prabhupada's own life story and what he actually achieved simply because of that surrender to Krishna. Coming alone to the West, etc., and sitting on his own park benches in New York City, a pretty dangerous thing to do, maybe not as quite as dangerous in the 60s as it is now, but still dangerous thing to do, all on his own with no resources, nothing. Yet we're all sitting here today in this glorious building, in this glorious project, of which is just one of many hundreds upon hundreds of glorious projects around the world. We're well into 4 figures now in terms of ISKCON centers, etc. And that all came from Prabhupada. Yet there he was, sitting in an alien place in New York City in 1966, all on his own, with no resources, yet all of this has come. And it came from his surrender and his understanding that, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and if it's Krishna's will, and we surrender to Krishna's will, absolutely anything can be achieved. So, yeah, and that's a life lesson for all of us. While Jai, Shishi Radha Gokulananda ki Jai, Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki Jai, Shishi Gunatai ki Jai, Haribo. And of course, while we never want to even vaguely enter into the realm of minimizing Srila Prabhupada's achievements, the reality is that if we're able to have the level of surrender to Krishna that Srila Prabhupada had, then all of us can be empowered to achieve absolutely incredible, wonderful things in the service of the Lord. There is no, in that sense, there's no limit as to what we can achieve if we have that realization and that level of surrender. So in today's purport, it's kind of hard to grasp what's going on from the kind of modern geometric view of the universe. And that's why, of course, most people aren't thinking about the geometric view of the universe. I think if you go down to, Oxford Street today and start asking people about what is your geometric view of the universe, you probably won't find too many who'll give you a detailed answer. So in that sense, it's a niche thing like that. But of course, there are people, again, going back to the scientists, and they would just look at this, and that's why they label it as mythology. When you're talking about a living entity, Lord Varaha, coming out of the nostril of Lord Brahma, etc., and then expanding into, it's just for them. This is just kind of a crazy thing. But I guess we have to be a little sympathetic to that view, because they don't have the background that we have as a result of coming in contact with devotees, coming in contact with Srila Prabhupada's books, etc., to try to understand these things in a different context. So to some degree, I think if we were in that position and we were told something like this for the first time, without being given that context, we might think along the same lines, that this just sounds all too weird and too unusual. So yeah, it's hard to grasp. And just to go through it, for an example, for instance, where is the ocean that the earth could be submerged into? Most of us sitting in this room went through Western education, and the only oceans we're aware of are the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, or whatever. We're not aware of some other ocean, underneath the planets and all of that kind of thing, that's going on. So that's the first kind of challenge that we have. And it's described that Bhumandala, in the 5th canto, it's described that it's 2 billion miles in radius. So again, going back to my schooling, that means it's 4 billion in diameter, right? If it's 2 million in radius, it's 4 billion in diameter. It's a fairly simple equation. So again, that's an incredible thing to start trying to wrap into our brains as to how that works. And in the 5th canto, Srila Prabhupada quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur saying that Bhumandala, so the 2 billion mile radius, the 4 billion mile diameter, the Bhumandala, it's slightly less than the radius of the shell of the universe. It's slightly less. If it was the exact same size, then it would be like you see in those videos of people wearing those jeans and they look like they're actually poured into them, rather than putting them on somehow or other. The jeans are there and you pour the body into them because they fit so tightly like that. So if that was the way of if Bhumandala was the same size as the shell of the universe, there would be no wiggle room. It would be just fitting really, really tightly. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that it was that wiggle room that allowed Lord Varaha to lift the universe. It's because there is space in that thing. But again, that's a very hard thing to understand, unless, of course, that we at least accept theoretically. By the way, I'm almost thinking I'm on the street talking to somebody who is totally not believing anything that's in the Bhagavatam, let's say in this part of the Bhagavatam. And I'm trying to think of what they might bounce at me and then how I might bounce back a response. So it is hard to understand unless we at least theoretically accept the concept of higher dimensions like that. And I think many people are at least willing to enter into that concept of accepting higher dimensions. And of course, what higher dimensions means, in essence, it means that we're not just considering, width, height, and breadth, right? Width, height, and breadth, those three dimensions. That there's dimensions beyond that, the dimensions that we're aware of in the material world. Now I'm just thinking, in the 7th chapter of Gita, right? 7.2 Gyanam Teham Savigyanam, where Krishna says to Arjuna that I'll now declare unto you this full knowledge, both phenomenal and noumenal knowledge. And once that's known, there is nothing else that remains to be known. So that's kind of what we're dealing with there, and that's why it's very hard for people, unless they have that training to understand and sort of training and the tools to try and understand this. It's kind of very difficult because all we're really dealing with for ourselves is the phenomenal world. We're not even touching yet on the noumena behind that phenomena. So it's kind of it's difficult. But Srila Prabhupada, so many times, and I think this for me is a key point, at least it's a key point for me in being able to actually, surrender to the fact that I don't know everything. So Srila Prabhupada stressed, and he stresses it so many places, so many times, he stresses that our senses are limited. So we can only see so far. I'm staying in that nice little place they have in the village there, the old post house. It's literally a 5-minute walk. But I have no clue what's going on there right now. Somebody could be breaking into my room, and stealing my millions, that I have hidden under the mattress. Prabhu, you're not allowed to leave. No. So who knows what's going on there? Who knows? And that's just 5 minutes away in Letchmore Heath. Then we start talking, what's going on in central London? What's going on across the sea in Ireland, across the ocean in America, across the other oceans to India? We have no clue what's going on because we can't see. We're here, we're stuck here, we can't see beyond. Whatever it is, what is the range of vision? Anybody an optometrist in the room? What is our range of vision? Is it 100 meters? Is it 200 meters before everything becomes impossible to kind of gauge? So Prabhupada stressed that so many times, and making the point that therefore we are unable to grasp the full extent of the material world. What to speak of higher dimensions? We're just talking about in the world that we live in, so what to speak of higher dimensions? And again, that point that I made, that the more that we can't understand our limitations, the more we actually think we can control everything, or at least the more we want to control everything. And it is amazing when you think about it. You do have people who are still telling us that they will figure out the origin of this universe. They will figure that out. It's just now coming. We're learning so much. In the last 10 years, we've learned so much. The last 20 years, we've learned so much, and we will. So they are thinking like that they can understand everything. But the more that's there, the more limited they actually become. So this scene that we're witnessing now in this particular pastime, it very much falls into that concept of being in a higher dimension. And of course, the other thing is that we know from many, many different pastimes that the Lord, Krishna, he can only be seen by transcendental vision. We have that example in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna manifested in his universal form. But Arjuna, in order to see that universal form, he had to be given divine eyes. He had to be given that transcendental vision by Krishna. You can't do it on the strength of your own senses like that. And when you think about Krishna manifesting his universal form, Arjuna is standing in one place on the battlefield of Kurukshetra when that universal form is being displayed. Yet then it describes what Arjuna actually sees, even though he's standing in one place. He's seeing multiple universes. That's one thing that he's seeing. Then he's seeing, thousands of, or unlimited, I think is the word that Prabhupada uses. He's seeing unlimited hands, unlimited arms, unlimited legs like that. And thousands of suns, right? He's seeing thousands of suns. Now, if the sun shines today, it might do. But whenever the sun next shines, actually, I'm going to say, try this, don't try it. But, we know that when the sun is shining brightly in the sky, if we look at it, within seconds we become blinded. We can actually damage our eyes, quite badly just looking directly at the sun like that. So that's just one sun. Yet Arjuna was looking at thousands of suns. And he was able to see them, etc., and there was no negative reaction. So again, it just indicates how limited we are without, one, understanding the higher dimensions, and two, being the mercy of the Lord being bestowed upon us, in this case, so that we can see whatever form the Lord is actually manifesting. So we're just so limited, so limited, and if we can just accept that and imbibe that and really, really sort of... what's the word? Really rejoice in the fact that we are so limited, because that will help us to surrender to that personality who is not limited in any way, shape, or form. It's funny, actually, I was just in the shoe room earlier, and I just saw something in the shoe room that I hadn't seen before. It kind of looks like a mini ironing board stuck on the wall. I don't know if anyone's familiar. It's white and blue in color. I don't know if anyone familiar with that. So anyway, a devotee then came into the shoe room also. I won't mention his name to embarrass him, but he's a Bhaktivedanta Manor devotee who's been here for many, 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 many years. And I just said to him, Prabhu, what's that? And he looked at it and he says, God, that's a good question. So, just that limitation. First off, the limitation that, you can live here for 10, 20 years and you don't even notice something. You've probably been in the shoe room tens of thousands of times, and taking off your shoes, putting on your shoes, maybe having a conversation with someone. And there's something on the wall there that's been on that wall. Well, actually, I don't know how long it's been on the wall, but for the sake of this story, let's say it's been on the wall for the last 20 years. So it's been on the wall for 20 years. You've seen it thousands of times and you haven't even noticed it. What more do we need to know to indicate how limited we are as conditioned souls? Anyone know what that is in the shoe room, by the way? An air freshener. It ionizes. Thank you, Prabhu. There's a self-realized soul. He knows what's on the wall in the shoe room. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. So Arjuna seeing the universal form, that's one example. Then, of course, it's not quite the picture behind you there, Navadvip Prabhu, but then we have the picture of Garbhodakshay Vishnu lying on an antashesha with the stem of the lotus coming from his navel, and of course, that's where Brahma appeared from. Now, all of that is presented in one picture, yet the story, if we read that story in the Bhagavatam, when Brahma awoke, or I think as Prabhupada says, when he returned to consciousness, I think is the phrase that he uses. Anyway, when Brahma awoke on the lotus or out of the lotus flower, the first thing that he wanted to do was find his origin, where he came from. And, it's kind of a natural thing. I mean, most of us grew up, I'm sure some didn't, but most of us grew up with a mother and a father. So that was never something that we had to sort of explore really in any deep way. Just as a kid, you automatically, you realize, this is your parents, and then as you get a little older and understand a little bit about biology, then you understand this is where you came from your parents. So Brahma, he came out of the lotus, but that didn't really satisfy him in terms, he wanted to know, well, where's the lotus coming from? What is the origin and what is my origin? So what did he do? He assumed, he reasoned that it must lie at the stem of the lotus, and if he can get to there, then he can maybe find out where he originated from. So that's what he did. He went back in and he tried to go down to find out where he came from. And I think then it's explained that his time to do that kind of ran out. I'm not sure how long that time was. Maybe somebody knows in the room. I can't remember exactly. But, the idea is it was quite a long period of time that he was trying to figure out where he came from. But he couldn't actually figure out where he came from. And then, of course, he heard the words tapa. And then he decided to meditate both on those words and also the lotus, where he kind of came from. And then he was able to see Garbhodakshay Vishnu, and he could understand where he came from. But it was through the process of meditating on that phrase, tapa, that he gained the mercy of the Lord in order that he was able to see Garbhodakshai Vishnu. So again, it's an example of this is how we can understand things and this is how we can realize things by getting the mercy of the Lord. Now, what's interesting about that particular pastime, is that that thought has just gone right out of my mind, so I'll have to, hopefully it will come back. I had another angle to say something on that, and it's just completely gone. My apologies. Brahma went in, meditated. Oh, yes. So I just wanted to make the point. What's interesting is that for us, that is all contained in one picture. We've seen that picture many times, right? So you look at that picture, and it's all contained in that picture. So obviously, that picture is just is essentially for our understanding, so as that we can see the whole thing, if you like. But that isn't the reality. The reality was much larger, because if we could just see it in a picture, then obviously Brahma wouldn't have had to go back down the lotus flower, etc., and try to find out his origin. It would have all just been there in front of him. But it wasn't all there in front of him, because Garbhodakshai Vishnu, for one, is absolutely gigantic. Can anybody give me the dimensions of Garbhodakshai Vishnu? No? Huh? Unlimited. That's a good answer, Baru. Thank you very much. Unlimited. Huge, but we see it all just in one picture, and then the lotus, etc., then Brahma and all of that kind of thing. So in this particular pastime, Lord Varaha is appearing from Lord Brahma's nostril. Initially small, but even that, when I say initially small, that's a relative small, because he obviously had to come out of the nostril of Lord Brahma. But how big is Lord Brahma? He's not unlimited, I don't think, so you have to give me the dimensions this time, Prabhu. So we don't, how big is Lord Brahma? Gigantic like that. So, but he came out of his nostril, so from one point of view, relatively speaking, it was small. But then very, very quickly, he became gigantic in size, just increasing, and became absolutely gigantic in size. Now, that, of course, we understand as one of the cities, the Mahima city, is it? Those two cities are together, right? The Mahima and the Anima city. One is the ability to expand, and then one is the ability to contract again like that. So that's what was happening here. Lord Varaha was expanding in this Mahima city. And that plays quite a constant theme throughout the Vedic literature in the different pastimes and different stories. Even we just have to think of the demigods and the scale that they operate on. They're absolutely ginormous. I think, again, I'm sorry for this, but I think we understand, if I'm not mistaken, either Arjuna or Krishna, one of them was 18 foot tall, isn't it? Huh? Bhima was 18 foot tall. Okay, we're all floating around the sort of anywhere from 12 foot to 15 to 18 foot, something in that realm. But the demigods are much, much larger than that again, in their higher dimension, like that. So they're much larger again. But they often come to the material world. Actually, there's even a reference from Srila Prabhupada, now how sort of, Prabhupada may also be making this point from a kind of complementary point of view, if you like, but he does make the point that his assumption was that when he came here and started the Hare Krishna movement, particularly some of his first disciples, he was equating them, he was making the equation between when Krishna descended 5,000 years ago, that all the demigods descended with Krishna. That when Prabhupada came, his disciples, particularly his first disciples, but actually, in one sense, all the devotees are very, very special like that. But anyway, if you take the example from Krishna book, that Krishna descends, all the demigods descend. So Krishna was, let's say, 15 foot, because we had a 12, we had an 18, and we had a 15. Let's go for the middle field. I thought it was 18, actually, but anyway, what to do? So let's say 15, 18 foot. But the demigods in the heavenly planets, they are not 12, 15, or 18 foot. They are many, many, many multiples of that size, like that. So when they came with Krishna 5,000 years ago, they had to also contract in size like that. So yeah, it's a common theme. Another one is when Krishna and Arjuna travel throughout the universe to meet Mahavishnu and to speak with Mahavishnu. Now again, we talked about Garbhodakshay Vishnu. Someone said that he was unlimited. Mahavishnu is also unlimited in size, ginormous. So a little 15-foot personality wouldn't really be able to, engage with and talk with Mahavishnu. So again, the understanding is that to enact that pastime, they had to expand. But then, of course, they came back to this realm, and they would have contracted again. So in essence, it's just about there's so much, because of our limitations, there's so much we don't know, don't see, our limited perception, and it's just that if we can accept that rather than fighting back against it. Another example is in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, when Gopi Kumar is traveling throughout the different planetary universes. As he comes to each one, he doesn't see the next one. It's not that the next one is visible like that. So all these different dimensions, different dimensions, different sizes, what's going on. It is amazing because we live here. We become absorbed in everything that's just within our immediate perception, our immediate neighborhood, if you like, and we become absorbed in that. It is, like I was saying, as devotees, of course, it's not that we don't think about these things, certainly at least from time to time, but for the vast majority of people, that's kind of it. Their world is what they're seeing right in front of their nose every day. And it's such a limited understanding of our existence and what it's all about, kind of thing like that. Also in the purport today, I was struck when Prabhupada quoted the Isopanishad and that the devotees are requesting the Lord to remove the glaring effulgence because that covers his face. It's interesting though, because the impersonalists, they hold that glaring effulgence is actually, the Brahmajyoti, is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Entity, God. So according to them, if you remove the material covering, then you get to see Krishna, then you get to see the Supreme, the ultimate reality, the ultimate manifestation of God, the impersonal form. But that Isopanishad prayer, I think it's text 15, that's just so no misunderstanding, that prayer is actually asking the Lord to remove that glaring effulgence so that his face can be seen. So even if we move beyond the realm of people just struggling in the material world, well, of course the Mayavadis are struggling in the material world as well, but they at least have a spiritual understanding. But even their understanding is, again, it just falls into this category of being very, very limited. Because, even, as I said, even if we could see the Brahmajyoti, which we can't and they can't, but even if we could see it, you're still not seeing Krishna, you're still not seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this verse also, to some degree, it reminds us of the Christian concept that in the very beginning of the Bible, Book of Genesis, how many people have read the Book of Genesis? Jai. Well done. So now I'm under pressure. I'm quoting it properly. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But it reminds us of the Christian understanding that in the beginning there was the Word. It is very interesting that. It's also an interesting passage when we're presenting Krishna consciousness, particularly to the people from a Christian background. It's a real connection that we have with them. The very first thing it says, pretty much the very first thing it says in the Book of Genesis is, in the beginning there was the Word. So it's sound vibration. In the beginning there was the Word. And Brahma's body, just as a point of information, is a manifestation of transcendental sound. There is one verse, right, where it describes Brahma's body, different parts of Brahma's body being connected with different letters, and also different letters of the Sanskrit alphabet, and then also different musical notes, etc. So the whole concept of Brahma is it's all based on sound. And of course, when he came out of the lotus flower and wanted to find his origin, he couldn't find it through the power of his senses. He couldn't do that. But then by meditating on sound, in this case tapa, by meditating on sound, he was able to realize those things. So the whole concept of creation is that ultimately form is originally on the spiritual platform. That's where form is originally. And then it descends from the spiritual to the subtle, and from the subtle to the gross, where we are now. So in one sense, our material bodies are kind of like simulations of the spiritual body. They're kind of like simulations of the spiritual body. It's interesting that as well, because the scientists take that as well, and it's not just, they're simulations, and there's different atoms, obviously, and all the different parts that make up the material body. But the key part of that is that they are, it's the combination, the sequencing and the combination of how they're all put together that create the various different bodies that we experience. Now, of course, from our point of view, we accept and understand that. That's not against our philosophy. But of course, the key ingredient ultimately is the spirit soul that enters into those combination of chemicals and atoms and whatever they might be to bring life. Now, the scientists kind of conveniently forget about that part. And then they argue that we will be able to create life. We just need to crack that combination of what the sequencing is and the different formula is of the combination of the material elements like that. And they've seized upon that, and they argue that, if they can reproduce that human pattern of cells and how they're put together, they will be able to create human life. But as I say, they overlook the critical role of the jiva. And they talk about, this concept will lead to, if they can get that pattern together, they can then transplant it, the pattern of the human brain into computers, et cetera, and then they'll be able to create, I was going to say artificial intelligence, and that's a whole nother discussion. But they'll be able to create human intelligence by doing that. But again, all throughout Bhagavad Gita, I was just reading in the 14th chapter the other day where Prabhupada was saying it's due to association of these three modes of the material nature and not understanding that we are not the Lord of them, but they are the Lord of us. That is the root cause of us and just everybody essentially who doesn't have that realization, the root cause of trying to dominate in the material world. And you see that. I mean, look at the world that we live in right now. And I don't want to get into relative things. To some degree, I don't want to get into relative things. But, can you imagine you're sending every week, apparently, thousands of people to their death because you want to dominate a piece of land. It's just an extraordinary thing. That your brain is thinking that's a good idea on any level, that is a good idea, what to speak of the karmic level and the level of spirituality. But it's just an extraordinary, why would you think that is a good idea? You can only think like that if you are just convinced that somehow or another you are the Almighty, you are superior to everybody else, you are ultimately supreme. Ultimately, you're thinking you're Krishna, not that you would necessarily ever heard of Krishna. So, I'll finish now because time's running out. You may have heard me speak of this before, but it just fits in so nicely to today's verse and purport, so I just want to quote it again. Again, it's going back to science. And this goes back a few years now, but a group of really so-called eminent scientists kind of combined together to give their verdict on the origin of the universe. And it was a lengthy paper, which I read in full, but it was a lengthy paper, but there was a few sentences in it, if you like, it was their kind of chatur sloki, if you like, of their long paper. And this is what they wrote in terms of the creation of the universe. They wrote that the entire universe, from the fireball that created the Big Bang, to everything that we see today, the star-studded cosmos that we see today on a clear night. It was kind of clear yesterday in the evening. It was, you look up, it's kind of astonishing. So the entire universe, from the fireball of the Big Bang to the star-studded cosmos that we see today, popped. I love that word, it's like popcorn, popcorn pops, boom, boom, boom. That is amazing. I should watch that popcorn do that, actually. It's quite good. Anyway, so from the fireball of the Big Bang to the star-studded cosmos that we see today, and everything, in the world that we inhabit, the universes, etc., popped into existence out of nothing. I mean, again, it's kind of the cerebral version of the Kshatriya thing we just mentioned about sending loads of people to their death every day simply because you want to dominate a piece of land. This is now the kind of cerebral version of that, popped into existence out of nothing. And then they go on to say, the last sentence, they go on to say, it had to happen, the manifestation of everything that we see, all the universes that we see, it had to happen, it had to pop into existence, it had to do that, because nothing is inherently unstable. Now, you can imagine people reading that or hearing that, them giving lectures, and you can just imagine when they say that statement I just made, all the people sitting in the audience, you can just imagine them all going like this, you know. And it's just a load of baloney. It had to happen because nothing is inherently unstable. Oh yeah, and where did you get that from? For me, I'm sorry, let's look in the Oxford English Dictionary, if someone has it in front of them, and see what it says, what nothing is, what the definition of nothing is. But no thing, nothing, zilch, nothing, 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 nothing. How can nothing have a quality? And then why? And if it does have qualities, which it doesn't, why do you pick one quality? It's unstable, and therefore this all had to come about. It's just incredible. It's just incredible what people fill the airwaves with. And these are eminent scientists, you know, who've probably spent how many years studying in university and all this thing, you know. But just so you know, the reason this world, it's got nothing to do with Mahavishnu. It's got nothing to do with Garbhodakshay Vishnu. It's got nothing to do with Lord Brahma. It's got nothing to do with any of that. It simply popped into existence out of nothing because nothing is inherently unstable. Hare Krishna. I think we should close down all our temples, you know. Now, as I said at the beginning, and I will finish it now, as I said at the beginning, though, we can consider ourselves fortunate because most people, you're not going to meet people who are going to get into those kind of conversations with you. And most people are just really looking for a solution to their immediate problems. And of course, we know that the root cause of all their problems is the material body. It is them accepting, coming to the material world and accepting a material body. And most people just want relief from that. So I heard a story recently that a little while back at the Los Angeles Ratha Yatra, just like at London Ratha Yatra, we have a question and answers booth, which is often one of the kind of really good parts of the Ratha Yatra festival, you know, the question and answers booth. So they had their questions and answer booth, and there was a really good audience, you know, however many seats they had, maybe 30 seats or something in the tent, you know. But the seats were all full, and there was people standing behind the seats, and they were all, you know, focused on the questions and particularly the answers that were being given. So somebody asked some question, I guess fairly standard kind of question, and the devotee who was answering it, he just got right into being not the body, you know, and really focusing on that and really drilling down on that point. We are not these bodies. This is the root cause of all our problems. And he just was really stressing that point very strongly. There was two people standing up at the back. And, you know, I don't know them, you don't know them, so I don't think they can take offense as such, you know. But they are what's known, as we know in America, well, it's actually not just America anymore, the quote-unquote, the obesity crisis, you know, that basically most people on this planet are just getting bigger and bigger all the time, you know. But America definitely led the way on that. I remember the first time I went to America, I just literally couldn't believe it. It was like, how can you actually, you know, not exactly, you know, whatever myself, although I'm stable. I'm stable at 14 stone. Anyway, but even then, you know, if you're carrying around a little bit of weight, I won't look at anybody, but if you're carrying, I'll look at myself. If you're carrying around, you know, you feel it. You know you're carrying a little bit extra, you know, and whatever like that. Now, 14 stone, if you're like 28 stone, 35 stone, I mean, it's just inconceivable to me how you can actually exist, you know. So anyway, there was two people standing at the back of the tent. And they are, and America has a word for this, is interesting as well. The Americans have a word for it, or two words. They're known as land whales, which, you know, you can understand kind of why. As I say, it's not a poking at the Americans. As I say, it's a problem all over the world. India, because India doesn't have, although I suppose that's changing as well, but it doesn't historically have such a relationship with intoxication. India. So now that you have these burgeoning middle classes in India, so they've got loads of money. What do they do with their money? They just go to restaurants all the time, you know. And the middle classes in India, type 2 diabetes is like an explosion in India at the minute, you know, because there's so many people have it. I see some of our Indian body friends shaking in agreement with that point. Hopefully you don't have it, but so it's a problem all over the world. Anyway, so these two gentlemen, standing at the back of these two land whales, standing at the back of the tent, and this devotee was really stressing on this point, that we're not the body. And then one of them apparently turned around to the other one, and you know, some devotees heard this. You know, one of the land whales turned around to the other land whale and said, "Hey Jeff, what a relief." So for us, we keep it simple. For us, actually, obviously, we take from these pastimes and many other, philosophical points that are given to us throughout Shastra, throughout Srila Prabhupada's purports. We take it to understand how limited we are. We are just super limited. But then we rejoice in the glorification that the more we understand our limits and how insignificant we are, the more glorious our position is, and the more we're able to surrender to Krishna, and the more we're able to do for Srila Prabhupada and his movement in terms of spreading it. But for the rest of the population out in the material world, for most of them, they are just craving some relief from the suffering that they're experiencing. And the best relief that we can give them is knowledge of Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Actually, I don't know if anyone has a question. I don't know what time I'm meant to finish. Okay, we'll take one, maybe two. Maybe we'll take that gentleman's as well. Go ahead. Thank you.
How big Brahma is, or the size is. That's a very interesting thing to explore for me in the future. I just wanted to ask you a question.
And also, when you're exploring it, to explore also how long, I'm going to do it myself because I've forgotten, how long he was trying to go down the stem.
To go on the stem.
I think it was quite a long time. You know,
to find his origin, yeah. It's a very good thing for preaching. I wanted to ask you a question. As in the verse, you said that when the great devotees offer the Vedic prayers to the Lord, recognizing Lord Bor to be Lord Vishnu, he said that they have offered the prayers from the position of realizing their position, where they are at, and where they are that's why they're completely surrendered to him. But my question is, from my small brain and a lowly position as a human, how can we offer prayers as humans without having realized our position? I mean, what our position, my understanding is that we are not this body, that we are spirit soul, but I don't know how the rest, but I definitely didn't realize that. So from what position I could offer prayer to the Lord? Or should I just read the exalted prayers of those who have realized it? Or,
you know, here's the thing. Being open and honest. When I was first reading Krishna book many years ago, you know, I found the prayers to Krishna the most boring part of Krishna. It was kind of, oh God, these are really long. And then you look how long they're. I want to get back to the story, kind of thing. You know? So I'm fully sharing your kind of understanding there. But actually, realization is a spectrum also. You know, it's not just, you know, one day you're not realized, next day you are realized. Devotees have so much realization, like so much realization. And you said, you understand you're not the body, but have you realized it? But part of that understanding is you are on the spectrum of realization. You, me, all of us may not have fully realized it, but we are definitely, you know, on the path to that full realization. You know, there's so many people in the material world, you know. I know sometimes you have a conversation with somebody, you know, who's never heard anything about our philosophy, And even when you say we're not the body, they don't even understand what that means, because there's zero realization. So it's a spectrum. You definitely have realization. Yes, like all of us, there's more realization to come. We use the word fully realized, or Srila Prabhupada uses the word fully realized. But I'm even wondering, Advaita Majuta Manadim Ananda Rupam, and Prabhu was telling us that, Mahavishnu or Garbhodakshaya Vishnu's body is unlimited. Are you ever fully realized? If Krishna is unlimited, there's always more and more things to understand and realize about Krishna like that. So I have no idea where you are on that spectrum. I have no idea where I am on that spectrum. But absolutely, it's not that you are not without realization. You wouldn't be sitting here this morning, you wouldn't be asking that question if you didn't have realization like that. And then in terms of the prayers, I can only speak personally. Obviously, we've been given the Maha Mantra, as the primary tool for us to advance in spiritual life. And as initiated devotees, we've made a commitment that we will chant 16 rounds every day. So that's obviously the sort of bedrock, if you like, of our prayer. But then over and above that, prayers, what is a prayer? I think a prayer is kind of relying on Krishna, talking to Krishna. We have to be careful, talking and, whatever to Krishna and thinking somehow or another. But Krishna is in our heart. I mean, I know things, I know when I do something that I regret or something that I think wasn't ideal, or I say something to somebody that that I think, oh, that was a bit harsh, or whatever it might be, I often will say things like that. Krishna, why did I do that? How can I stop that? How can I control that? Like that. So in that sense, you're talking to Krishna. I don't think that's a bad thing to do. I think it's realizing, one, that you've done something you shouldn't have done, and two, you're asking for help to rectify and improve it. So yeah, I think just praying in that way, when we do things that we kind of think aren't the best, we could have done better, that we pray to Krishna for help going forward. But of course, as I say, the bedrock is the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, the basics is always get back to basics.
Yeah, back to basics.
Actually, thank you.
Thank you. But just this devotee, and then we'll finish, because 9 o'clock. I'm not sure what time. What time am I meant to finish? 9 or quarter to? Okay, so go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for the class. My question has to do with the Vedas being, the Bhagavatam being said to be a commentary of the Vedas, and both the Vedas and Bhagavatam are said to be the form of the Lord. But I know that the class was about how our senses are imperfect to be able to understand many things. But my question is, how exactly do we derive the Bhagavatam from the Vedas, given that, like the Rig Veda, for example, which you mentioned, has most of it has to do with Agni and Indra, but like there are very few mentions of Krishna. So how do we understand that the Bhagavatam comes from the Vedas? Or yeah.
Well, I mean, the Vedas are vast in that sense, So, in addition to what the Rig Veda, etc., and the other Vedas, in addition to those, you have all the histories, and you've got the Puranas and the Upanishads, etc., etc. It's a vast kind of thing, and as we know. And when you say, how do we derive, we don't derive anything, by the way. We're not deriving anything. But, obviously we understand that the Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana, and we know the history, Srila Vyasadeva, etc., reciting and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, to answer your question, because what you're basically asking is, no mention of Krishna in the actual Vedas in terms of the Rig Veda, Samaveda, etc. No mention. I'm taking your word on that, and it would be kind of. I wouldn't necessarily know that off the top of my head, but even taking that into consideration. So how are you asking? How is the Bhagavatam part of the Vedas, or?
The Bhagavatam is said to be the commentary of the Vedanta Sutra, which is said to be a commentary of the Vedas.
The Vedas, yeah.
But if the Vedas don't have much, directed towards Krishna, then how do we get the Bhagavatam? Well,
I suppose it's a case of, if you take the Vedas, like say in school, you've got basic mathematics, so there's a basic kind of core, if you like. But then as you delve deeper and you're taking information from more knowledgeable people in various aspects of the basic concept of mathematics or whatever it might be, you know, it expands unlimitedly into various different subjects. So in that sense, you know, Krishna, it's kind of inconceivable that on one sense Krishna is covered and hidden from the eyes of I say why it's inconceivable because in one sense that's true, but in another sense Lord Chaitanya appeared 520 odd years ago, you know, to open the storehouse of love of Godhead. We're all here, and today most of us will be engaged in activities to try to promote Krishna and bring knowledge of Krishna to people like that. So in that sense, he's not covered, you know, and I mean, if he was covered and remaining covered, then we'd have an impossible task in trying to spread the Sankirtan movement. But at the same time, that understanding is there. Krishna, it's not cheap. Prabhupada talked about it so many times, you know, that Krishna is not cheap, you know, and it's not that Krishna just appears on our order like that. You know, we have to do things. What is it that you act in a way, you don't demand to see God, you act in a way that God wants to see you, you know. So in that sense, when we're on that platform, it's not hidden, and these things are revealed to us. So in that sense, the Bhagavatam is a revelation of Krishna. It's the full realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form as Shama Sundar. So yeah, it's part of the Vedic, the overall Vedic knowledge, but it's a kind of hidden part, and it has to be revealed to us if we're qualified, and then by special personalities like Sukadeva Goswami, like Srila Vyasadeva, etc., etc. But there's probably a better answer to your question, Prabhu, and my apologies for not being able to answer it better.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, please, go ahead. Go ahead.
What I thought was that my thought in relation to the question is that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Vedaischa sarver ahmeva vedyo, that by all the Vedas I am to be known, and Bhagavatam is where we can know Krishna and also know the process to realize Krishna.
Yeah, very nice. So Krishna is saying it himself of all the Vedas, even if in the actual, which I'm taking on your word for, I mean, I'm not sure where you got that particular piece of information from, because they're vast. I don't know how many verses are in the Rig Veda, but there's an extraordinary amount. But still, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is making that statement. Thank you very much, Manaji. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Gora Premanandi, Hari Bol.
Getting all right.
Yeah, the legs.
You can always have a chair. I saw some.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have an old chair.
Yeah. Then I'm officially surrendering to being an old man.
No, you're not this body problem.
Thank you. What's your name?
Bishop.
Bishop.
Bishop, yeah.
Bishop. Jai.
You were saying about people that try to control the world.
Mm.
They try to be Lord and Master, but they fail. Then devotees will then surrender to Krishna. Krishna kind of takes over, and they're so successful. How can we surrender? Because it seems Krishna only helps when it's with his service. He doesn't empower you to. If it's related to my own false ego, it doesn't really help me.
It can get you so far, you know, your own power of your own senses, your own intelligence, your own ego. It can get you so far, but yeah, only so far. Because you have, I don't know, people in the world like, who would be a good example? I don't know. But, anyway, some big business people who make millions, or big politicians who think control this, that, and the other. So it can take you so far, but it can only. But if your question is how to surrender, I mean, gosh, if there was a secret formula to that, you'd be able to sell it for a lot. But as I was saying in class, for me, the easiest path to surrender is understanding how limited I am, how kind of insignificant I am.
That's the. And then just kind of rely on Krishna. My thing is, okay, Krishna wants us to serve him in different ways. But there's so many services. So he would only empower you to do one particular service that he wants you to do, or is it if I do another service, or because I don't know what exactly he wants me to do.
Well, first off, I would say that Krishna can empower you to do anything in that sense. Now, of course, Krishna is ultimately in control, so you, me, we're all born with certain tendencies and proclivities and skills or whatever. So, in that sense, logically, you would use what you're born with, because Krishna's kind of given you those skills. But ultimately, I think Krishna could empower us to do anything. I mean, Srila Prabhupada, like when he was translating Bhagavatam, he's saying, and then he would, devotees would, Prabhupada would often have devotees read Bhagavatam to him, that he's translated, and read the Krishna book to him, that he's translated, and then Prabhupada would sometimes stop and say, I didn't write that. I could. So in that sense, Krishna can empower us to do anything if we're surrendered. But that again, surrender is the key thing. And also, so your proclivities, there's three things really. Surrender, because that's what we're meant to do. Your natural skills, proclivities, and talents that you have, and then guidance from others, because that's another thing as well, that we may perceive that this is the best thing for us to do, but it might not be, so we can also, it's always good to cross-reference.